Okay, there was too much to put in one hour video, so I had to split it into two. This should cover the rest of the Season 1 Abnormalities, along with some distortions. Next we have Chroma, and her distorted form, Chroma the Dreamer of Human Wholeness. Chroma was a high-ranking figurehead within N-Corps, the leader of the Hammer and Nail, a psychotic and a hater of prosthetic users, cloaking her sadism and bloodlust under a veil of righteous zealotry. Although the Hammer and Nail don't represent N-Corp as a whole, the fact that they allow this to happen and have allowed the formation of this anti-prosthetic division shows that they support it, at least to an extent. She isn't above using deceit and manipulation to get what she wants. And when facing the damn dozen, she was powerful enough to take on the whole group of them. Both as a human, likely with some non-technological augmentations, and as a distortion. A distortion that is based around lust, as in her lust for power, as she partially resembles the lust Pekatula. Yes, a lust for power and not for any benevolent purpose. She was able to wipe out all of them with a single swipe of her distorted hand. She's one with delusions of godhood, and she had an ability to see into alternate timelines, which might have driven her insane. Well, the ability to travel to other universes might have driven Irori insane. Yes, the Purple Tear, but anyway, she's a masochist and a sadomasochist, as she likes taking it as well as dealing it. That world is better off without her being in it. I mean, it's a sack world as it is. As for the actual fight against her, as a human, barely, she is a TEF level threat, with all of the attacks that Faust, one who grips identity has, and more. A focus on delivering nails to the enemy, and she has an attack which can stagger her if she loses, and staggers the target and severely weakens them as she wins. And if the sign is complete enough in Sinclair, he is strengthened with more attack and protection. If not enough, he's weakened by bind and paralyze. And Sign can also reduce the healing that Chroma can receive down to 0 if it's enough. And if Sinclair's One Who Shall Grip identity is used, then this will stagger her, as she couldn't believe that her vision has become reality, not considering that in that reality, it wasn't her that broke him and caused him to join their cause. It was Faust in her role, and she was much more competent in that regard. Although Chroma will snap out of it when she's attacked, and after she's beaten once, she will distort into a form that resembles the Lust Pekatula, where she can inflict slow, paralyze, fragile, and bleed. She is a He-level threat in this form. Then when she's severely weakened, Chroma will be breathing heavily, perhaps the side effects of her transformation. Her posture is unstable, and her eyes were looking elsewhere, with her focus disrupted. And in this event, the sinners might have a chance to land a critical strike. One of them circling around her fleshy mass to disorient her. She let her guard down, and one of them delivered a devastating blow. It seemed pretty effective, a deep, indelible wound. This staggered her and allowed for the others to attack unopposed for a time. Sinclair wrote this report, even though he didn't feel like it. But that doesn't mean that he wouldn't. He hadn't fought Chroma before or seen how N-Corp's troops fight. But from what he could tell, Chroma likely knew how to use a sword. She always carried one with her. She looked not that different from what he remembered, except taller. Then he mentioned the disorienting laughter. Oh, yeah. We forget that she's practically a gender-bent joker. Asking if he could stop there. Faust mentioned that none of that helped. Then he mentioned that he was angered by her killing other members of the damned dozen, murdering everyone in the back lines, blowing that whistle. She came to him, too. He was unable to do anything. Hearing that sound made him go all stiff. He could only watch Chroma slaying the others. He wanted to crush her skull so dearly, but he couldn't move a muscle. He asked Dante what he should do. Yes, that's clearly PTSD, considering the effects that whistle has, and also who blew that whistle. He still feared Chroma. Looking at her face made his twitch. Her blade gave him the chills. Her maniacal eyes, yes, reminded him of that day at Christmas when his family was murdered by her and Guido. Her creepy grin still has his eyes quiver, but he's okay now. He can stand up to her whistles. She's too vile for him to stand by, and he's too ashamed to see the sinners she killed if she's just let go. He's changed much since then. He's died many times and claimed a lot of lives. He didn't care about losing his mind. He wanted to skewer her chest with a stake over and over again. Someone, either Ryoshu, Heathcliff, or Otis, approved of this good mindset. Faust saw that while his willingness to fight was admirable, the log was for observations rather than decrees of his determination. Sinclair apologized for this. His report on her distortion form... Well, let's just say Sinclair observed that Chroma always had an obsession with flesh, which accumulated into what they were seeing. A gruesome creature. At first, he agreed with her. Replacing flesh with something else was unpleasant to him. But this was really unpleasant. Believing that only your thoughts were the correct ones, and letting that consume your mind whole. Yes. I mean, even at best, if she meant well with that, all it's doing is causing suffering and death. And yet she saw nothing wrong with that. Again, that's one less psychotic in that world. Next we have the distortion known as Papa Boingy. A Azaean level threat, he operated Yunbongs, which was named after his mother, who didn't touch the fried chicken which was later revealed because she preferred pizza, which inspired him to open a fried chicken restaurant. This led him to eventually be in competition with K-Corp's restaurants, and the manager of that decided to use the concept incinerator to wipe out all memory of the recipe for his fried chicken. The shock of this made him distort, and he inflicted his frustration on any that he encountered, sending head chickens to possess others. This distortion is the first to be fought outside of a dungeon, within K-Corp's nest, the last place that you'd expect such danger to be. During his battles, he has backup in the form of summoned head chickens that come from the bucket on his back. The more of them that are around, the more damage is increased. The more that are killed, the more fragile that part will be when it is staggered. In the story dungeon, he has a slight regeneration. He'll also be angry and harder hitting. The chicken bucket can be destroyed to remove the head chicken summon capability. Otis did the post-mortem report as ordered by Dante. Papa Boingy was first encountered around 1720 hours. According to Faust's report, it was believed to be a distortion, distinct from abnormalities. Otis tried to avoid engaging it and observe the development of the situation, despite the hostile behavior. So they were forced to battle it. She noted that it acted as the commander that ordered the head chickens to charge at them. The basket on its back is where they appeared from. She saw logistics as a crucial plan to victory, where she needed to block the enemy's supply routes. To take this into consideration in future battles. Gregor saw her as one faithful lieutenant. The efficiency of the document satisfied Faust. Then they engaged it in actual battle around 10 hours. Yes, 10 hours, and she wrote the report to let them know of their findings. Her advice that she offered earlier worked as predicted. According to Dante, adopting her suggestion after due consideration, the basket was damaged and then destroyed, which also destroyed its ability to replenish the head chickens, cutting off reinforcements. It might be obvious, not to Dante, its combat prowess is lowered when its minions are gone. Removing the enemy leader directly using asymmetric forces is considered an efficient strategy in most situations, where concentrated attacks and a gradual breakdown of the enemy's defenses would prove wise. Heathcliff said that Clockface can't make heads or tails out of her military jumble. She had explained to them and told him not to use such derogatory terms to refer to them. Yes, I still struggle with English. Let's move on to something completely new. KGE-1J-23. With the ident code being O-06-20-02. A hit-level abnormality, first encountered in the refraction line. The first to use charge. A biomechanical town guide, a mix of sinews and mechanical parts. And it uses arms to incapacitate those that it grabs, and it has a heart that can be exposed and attacked after winning a clash against a specific attack. And if it puts someone into captivity the third time, An event happens. The mechanical puppet stretches out its wires onto the ground. The wires dug underneath the roots. And Dante was asking, is it trying to get electricity from the floor? The robot's terminal printed out, please cooperate. Dante asking if it can do anything while it's charging. They're unwilling to listen to this request. Whoever is sent, move quickly. The mechanical puppet staying perfectly still as a powerful attack shattered the puppet's capacitor. This made random letters appear on the terminal before it turned off. This released those captured and staggered the abnormality. It also made the one who did this faster for a time. And as for this abnormality, it is likely a representation of how information can be dangerous, and the desire of it can be potentially lethal. As it can be. Certainly in the case of the mirror dungeon encountered, but I'll deal with that in a separate video. Gregor wrote this report, and he didn't know about robots and machines. He might have seen it before. He was standing still in a room back then. Yes, the souvenir robot, the panel on its chest used to write stuff, where it could chop him in half if the chest was touched. He remembered running away from the robot because it tried to take the souvenir away from them. Yes, the mirror dungeon encounter is what's referred here. Robot arms came out, clanking just like them. Reflecting on it, further back, people older than him used to work on hunks of metal like that, or so he heard. If the stories like that were believed, some were modified for combat purposes. Ryosho called him an old fart. Gregor asked who wrote that. He didn't expect that to get him nostalgic. The backstreets was a place where toys from long ago can be found. One of them was a toy crane where you grabbed dolls trapped behind glass. You moved a claw using a joystick from the outside, and send it down to grab whatever's underneath. Ah yes, like the claw game, except less rigged. Yes, it was tight, and there he was, being in the doll's role, where the machine was playing that crane game with them, where it catches something, or rather, when it catches, when it catches something, it catches the prize. And yes, that's another childhood memory ruined. Now this implied that he was abducted around adolescence, as he was free at a time when he was playing with toys. Then he figured it out. When it tried to grab them, he dodged it. After the claw went upwards, he was briefly distracted by his ruined childhood memory. It came down with a machine egg, where a mechanical film was pounding to a beat, like a heart. Normally not making sense, but they saw it. And he had to write about it in full detail. They chopped it off. The claw was pretty big to get around, but they cut into it. It stopped moving and gave them a breather. The heart belonged to a robot. It was creepy, but it was an abnormality, so what do you expect? He has no sympathy for others during the smoke war. He wouldn't waste that sympathy of what was, essentially trying to kill him and the others. We now continue with the Blubbering Toad. Another new one from the refraction line. The ident being T-01-23-04, a Zayn class abnormality that's a lot bigger threat than it might initially sound, as it's big on eating away at the sanity of those attacking it, likely a representation of the fear of despair, due to the gloom attacks and the sinking status infliction. And sinking decreases SP when attacked with that status. So for example, if they're sinking on someone and they're attacked and are damaged by that attack, the sinking will reduce the SP of the sinner that's attacked. Yes, quite fitting, as this abnormality is certainly big on psychological warfare in the most literal sense. As for combat, this one keeps up with the SP attacking, where if there's too little SP, that results in EGO corrosion, which means that the one with this can be just as much a threat to others as it can be to the abnormality. While attacking the eyes can make the attacker lose SP, they're also the weak point. After destroying both eyes, an event occurs. The blubbering toad took a deep breath, inflating its belly, a blue teardrop or two, well in its huge round eye sockets. The cavern would be filled with an air of gloom once its mouth opens. It would be best to knock the wind out of it. Dante was worried that this might be a little cruel, but the sinner chosen for this task gut-punched the inflated vocal sac. A deflating sound rang out in the cave, where it shrank to a slim shape. It sniffled. It was frustrated that it couldn't cry out loud as it wanted to. This staggered it, allowing for the sinners to pile on the damage. Ishmael, during this report on this abnormality, didn't consider this a pleasant encounter, even by abnormality standards. It stood still and cried strange noises, like it had given up on everything. The protruding blue eyeballs were shifting around with no confidence. The cry was eating away at her sanity. Then Ortius asked if that's the reason she swung her mace against the orders. It was hardly convincing. Heathcliff agreed with Ishmael. He'd snap too if he listened to that bloody croak. They're supposed to beat those abnormalities or whatever until they're eggs. What's the problem? Sinclair thought so. He agreed he would be better off to reduce it to an egg quickly. Heathcliff asked what Clockface was on about. They're ticking a lot. Ortiz asked for some respect for salvaging tools after they got themselves killed in an idiotic charge. She learned one thing. Getting hit by the eyes drains energy. She asked a few other sinners about this, and the more times the tongue is hit, the deadlier the eyeball seems to be. Further details can be figured out, although it's safe to play tactics around avoiding the tongue. It was not good to get hit by that. Rudyard thought that she was a weirdo. It wasn't tough at all. It just made her weak and drowsy. Sinclair felt different, asking if it made you gloomy. Roger wanted to know how. Sinclair referred to it being like past memories or wanting to give up and die. Roger pointing out to Faust that Sinclair needed mental aid. The left eye reduced health, and the right eye damaged sanity. It was best to avoid both regardless. It was also best to not drag it along. She felt that she was being dragged deeper into the swamp of gloom as the fight went on. She advised making quick work on it with fast and powerful attacks. She asked Dante what would happen if they waited for it to finish crying. And Ishmael didn't want to put that to the test. She remembered someone doing the same for her a long time ago, and it helped her back then. Now, was this after the event that caused her to no longer live on her boats? Well, whatever it was likely something that would likely have hit her hard. Finally, we have My Form Empties. Ident M-04-04-04. A what abnormality which mirrors the Judgment Bird, as it involves transferring something. In the Judgment Bird's case, it's sin. In the case of My Form Empties, it's karma when attacking. All the allies need to be defeated before the abnormality can be damaged, and that's no simple task as it involves the old G-Corp manager, Aida and Guido. I mean, they were a challenge separate, with each varied depending on which we're talking about. And focusing on the sound it makes caused them to forget everything. This abnormality was based around the Heart Sutra, where it stated, "Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form." Now, this is a condensed version of the Two Truths doctrine, which is the provisional truth or the daily experience of a concrete world, and the ultimate truth, one that's empty of concrete characteristics, along with the Sutra Tripitaka, which is an ancient collection of Buddhist sacred texts. The abnormality even resembles the Buddha. And then there's the concept of karma, where if enough builds, it eventually catches up with those that have it, which takes the form of it destroying the one that has the most bad karma with its kakahara. Sorry if I butchered the pronunciation. A spear-like object which is the core mechanic of this fight. The karma being used as the determination factor of that spear killing the target instantly. As for how this one is fought, it supports its allies with buffs while it attacks, and can also weaken the enemy, while delivering karma to itself and allies. Well, the latter in the case if the clash is lost, and to one of the sinners if it wins. Its allies act the same as they did in their first fights, and each needs to be defeated by transferring bad karma to each of the followers of My Form Empties. Once all of My Form Empties' allies are dead, it will be vulnerable to attack, where it felt as if they found peace in merely looking at it. The statue seems to be embracing the agony and anguish of it all. There's no self within, only everyone. It can also make sense that one would lose the will to fight. However, none can wholly shoulder another's suffering in their head before they are all allured by its false compassion. In an event, after all of the allies are dead, someone has to break the statue. Someone has to be sent to deal with this shock in their head. and whoever is sent will shake their head as they look around and they see that everyone was bowing to the statue. Some were uttering odd mantras as well, and they realized that such tranquility was the result of brainwashing. There was no need to describe how the worshippers would have felt upon realizing the truth. A powerful attack shattered the statue and everyone returned to their senses, which staggered the abnormality, allowing for some other attacks to go unopposed. In Faust's report, she recorded the information gathered from the encounter with this abnormality. It was first identified by the Before team and captured by the After team's Special Ops department. Well, information about it anyway, as it was encountered through the mirror before that task could be completed. As for the Before team's observations, the abnormality was a statue created as an idol for worship, appearing to be floating in the air at all times and showed no particular movement outside of gesturing with one hand. She also suggested that there was a related abnormality, but that required access to data that needed a higher security level. Now she's possibly referring to White Knights, an abnormality that resembled a biblically accurate depiction of an angel. As for myform entities, it attacks by levitating objects and sending them flying. Ishmael noted that the cleaners of After Team found them first. Wasn't it their job to catch them and put them away? Faust explained that they stand between multiple different possibilities. The After Team were either late or didn't get a chance. Ishmael said that she got that loud and clear, but Faust was unconvinced. When they fought this abnormality, she noted that it was accompanied by a group of followers under the influence of mind control. They were all from different groups, which gave that away. Where it attacks with a kakhala, holding spiritual significance. It floated like the abnormality, where it seemed sentient. Most attacks proved ineffective, although the exact reason was unclear. Then someone asked about the weird ring that she neglected to mention. Sinclair felt a strange feeling. He didn't know why it came from, or why it came to them. But when it stuck to the back, it felt strange, like a pressure is weighing down on the mind. And then someone, whoever it was is unclear, was confused that there was time to feel all that. The hits that they took while the ring was attached to them. Cut them in half by the waist. They can still feel that now. Sinclair didn't feel that he was hurt that badly. Then someone else, possibly Hong Lu, said that it reminded them of when the airborne ring returned to them. It might be the case that there was a rule behind its movements. As for why their attacks were unsuccessful, it was because of the followers, while all were alive. No significant damage could be dealt to it. A contractual obligation that required them to protect the abnormality. After its body was broken and the head had fallen, it attacked its followers at random. Although it was no simple task, it was effective with its suppression. Sinclair noted that it looked angry by how it moved, believing that it was lashing out at its minions for failing to protect it. Ortiz saw it as an incompetent commander, considering that it punished its soldiers on the front lines for errors in the operation. Now, I've looked at Chapter 4, and that one is going to take a while. Until next time.
Hail the rabbits!